Hi, and welcome to Heart-Centered Success. I'm your host, Diane Haworth, and today we're exploring the topic of trust. How do you trust yourself? How do you trust other people? How do you trust God? How do you find that place of trust in your life? And why is that important? This is something I've been working towards literally my whole life, and I have the perfect friend here to help me with it. Welcome back, Lisa Marie Platsky. Thank you for coming back, Lisa.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Diane. So excited to be back.
I am very excited. Lisa Marie is president and CEO of Upside Thinking, and she has got a lot of experience, not only as a coach and an author, but in this arena of trust. So that's exactly why she's the perfect person to be here today. And before we get started, I do want to dedicate this to our producer, Tremaine Johnson, who brought this topic to my attention and said, hey, this would be a great topic for a show. So thank you, Tremaine. Let's get started. When people ask you about trust, what do you think they mean by trust? What does that mean to you and to the clients and the people that you work with?
Trust is really about taking a leap of faith.
Yes.
It's about having complete and honest and unassuming belief that this person or place or thing is going to work out in your highest and best good.
I agree. There's an element of certainty, I think, about it, don't you? And that's hard from a human perspective. If you are working in this realm, that is not the easiest thing, right? I trust that my husband loves me. I don't always trust my husband will take the garbage out on Monday nights. But it's all flavors of the same kind of thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Which I find hysterical and sad and funny at the same time. This is a big topic.
I think trust has taught me about having a sense of humor.
Oh man.
There's some things when I believe it's going to happen, I put my faith, my trust, my belief in something, and it doesn't work out the way I envisioned it. And that allows for a deeper sense of humor.
It's amazing to me when I have had total faith something was going to work in a particular way. It didn't work that way, it worked out even better. Yeah. It doesn't always work that way at first, but as you and I were talking before we started taping, in retrospect, I can see how valuable every step on my path has been, whether I understood it or not. Do you feel that way?
I do, but I didn't always feel that way. That was not something that I was born with, or...
Honey, who is? I mean, seriously. Not me.
Yeah.
Not me. Something I think we come to.
Yes.
I have recently realized, I know you and I have spoken, and you know that I'm a student of the Enneagram, and I'm a type 6. And for any of you that are familiar with that profile, that is the type on the Enneagram that is the worrier, the stress. Trust has been a lifelong challenge for me. And it's only been since I really understood the Enneagram that I understood how in this lifetime, this was my opportunity to grow spiritually, was through this topic of trust. So I am so excited to go deeper with this with you. Why do you think it's hard for people to trust, just in general? Like you said, we're not born. Well, I don't know. Are we born trusting? Actually, I think maybe we are. As little babies.
As little babies, perhaps. As human beings on a whole, you and I, we're not wired for risk, or we're wired for comfort, we're wired for safety. And so perhaps as a baby, the trust in our parents, or the trust that we are going to be kept safe, is there. And then when something happens, even something small, the trust starts to erode. That's
exactly what I'm thinking. As small children, and I'm thinking toddlers, babies to toddlers, in most situations, obviously not in all situations, but I know, with my grandson, he's 2.5, he trusts that there'll be food every day. He trusts their mommy and daddy will give him a bath and put him to bed, and then he's going to have a good time, and he's got toys. I mean, he is in that stage that we talked about, being the unconditioned self.
Yeah.
As we go through life, and it's already started, he goes to school and daycare, and you you line up this way and you raise your hand and you don't throw food and you say, yes ma'am, thank you, becomes more of a conditioned self. And you can be conditioned by your parents and by society and by organizations, right? But that's where some of that restriction comes in. And I think that's where, at least for me, I think that's where a lot of the trust issues came from in childhood. Now I'm thinking about this on the way in. Did you have that experience at all?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because for me, my parents were, I thought life was happy, I thought life was good, I thought life was wonderful, and I woke up one day, 6 years old, and my dad didn't come home. And that was, if I look back at my life, I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know that it was a space of broken trust. It was just a circumstance, something that happened. And when I look back on that and say, wow, you know, there were so many things that came from that experience in trusting in another person or believing that they're going to be there. And like you said, when you're young, for the most part, not for every situation or every circumstance, you believe there's going to be food on the table when you're a kid, and things are going to be good and happy. And when something happens to break that in a very large way, I believe it can affect so many other opportunities that in how we view people. We can start to prejudge situations.
Oh, that's a good point.
And that for me happened when I was, started around 6 years old. Only I didn't know it. I didn't see that until decades later.
Well, unless you were studying psychology at 6, I'm guessing it would take you a little longer, right? But I really hear what you're saying, because it could be an illness. My mother's mother died when she was 9 years old. And all of a sudden, her mom was not there. It was a very sudden asthma attack, which in the 30s killed people, and it killed her. So her life was different overnight, just like yours was. There's so many things. While I didn't have that situation, I was a young child in the 60s, and my dad was a war vet from World War II, and I was the oldest, and he wanted me to know the ways of the world. And I remember sitting next to my dad, and I was probably 8 years old, maybe 8, 10, and we were watching Walter Cronkite, and we were watching images from Vietnam. And that was before they understood what those images did. I mean, they'd never broadcast a war before. And I was watching people die, and I was watching little children die. And then my dad would say, okay, now go outside and play. And I thought, I'm not going out there. Like, that's what the world looks like? No, thank you so much. No, I didn't want to do that. So it's so interesting the way this trust can erode, isn't it? And I mean, I'm sure my dad at the time thought he was doing something really great. I'm going to watch the news with my kid, not realizing my psyche was damaged for the next 50 years. That wasn't his intent. But how interesting, you just never know where somebody is, and you don't even know how a child is going to interpret something that might seem innocent.
Absolutely. Diane, I remember when I was probably about 30 years old and I had my godchild over. We watched TV in the background. I didn't have a TV. We were visiting my mom, and it was just one of those things where it was just in the background, just background noise. And all of a sudden, my godchild runs into the room, and I want to say she's probably about 9. And she said, "Are we going to give? Are we going to give?" And I'm like, "What?" Because I hadn't been paying attention. And it was a Sally Struthers commercial that had all of these images of children that were in need of food and who were going hungry. And she was just so moved. And then we're having this conversation about the world. And I was fascinated. I was really fascinated in that moment, because when you speak about trust, she had this trust that we were going to give. She had this trust that we were going to make a difference. She had this trust that there was a way for this to be fixed by someone else, and yet not an understanding of how this could happen.
Right.
So it was really I remember that as being such a big part in her life. And so you're right, those images that we have that could come from TV, they could come from experiences, and they don't have to be really big. That was a show in the background. Your dad just
thought he was going to share the news. Just
Right.
show me what's going on.
Absolutely.
Had no idea. So how interesting, what we're saying, I think, is that this trust can be eroded in these very day-to-day types things, accidents, health issues in the family. Quite recently in the United States, we've had lots of tornadoes, floods, hurricanes, wildfires, things that make you feel unsafe. It's hard to trust the environment. It's hard to trust a governmental agency that's going to come save you, right, from the wildfires or whatever it is. And like you and I experienced, as much as we're certainly not blaming anything, but even our parents, I mean, they're human. Mom, Dad, you were human. There was a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah.
And just like, I mean, when I raised my own kids, I think back and wonder, man, I'm really glad that they got through it. We're just being human ourselves. But so many different ways trust can be eroded. I think it's from, what are we saying? It's from situations, from daily life. What other kinds of things could help erode trust?
I believe beliefs.
Yeah.
In our beliefs. What I believe in as being 100% true, and then I find out that, oh, by the way, life isn't as black and white as I thought it was. That's huge. I remember growing up, I was raised Catholic. I thought everybody in the world was Catholic. It's what I knew. It's the school
Yep.
I went to. It was, I didn't have any understanding that there were world religions at the age of, 6 and 8. And so when I started to have conversations with my neighbors and found out that that wasn't, something simple like that, or even the foods that we ate, Wednesday was always spaghetti night. I assumed everyone had spaghetti on
Friday
Wednesday.
was fish.
Yes, Friday was fish.
For the people that didn't like fish, we hated Fridays at school, by the way.
Yes.
It's not a great thing.
Yes. So things like that are
Yep.
just beliefs that seem to be so innocent, and yet then you say, oh my gosh, I trusted that to be true,
Yeah.
to be a truism, if you will.
So
So it doesn't have to be complicated.
It doesn't have to be complicated. It's part of that conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember how my little world was rocked with the whole Santa Claus discussion, by the way.
Yes.
They've been lying to me for years. That was an erosion of trust in the two people that I trusted with everything. Even though, as you mature, you understand things at a different level, but it's fascinating to me when I started thinking about this idea of trust, how many ways we perceive ourselves to be betrayed, misled, and in some cases lied to, right? Everybody, well, I don't know about you, but lots of families, certainly mine, had the family secret. The crazy uncle that's in a home that nobody tells you about, or what happened, 3 generations ago. Everybody has something, because we're all human. But how it's perceived, and one of our family secrets was one of our great ancestors was actually hung at Salem during the Salem witch trials. So in my mother's side of the family, that was just shameful. When I got to study that in school, I thought, well, that was pretty cool. Not that she got hung, but
Right.
So perspective changes trust and changes meaning for particular incidents, events, secrets. You see, doesn't that make sense?
Yes. And when you speak about the family secret,
Yep.
I had no idea some of the things that happened in my family. And when I went back, the part for me that eroded trust was being told to keep it,
Yes.
to keep my mouth shut,
Keep the secret.
and to not say anything to anyone. It wasn't so much the circumstance; it was the lies upon the lies upon the lies that this has to be preserved, and no one can know about this. That's the part that had me question and had me wonder and had me not have as much faith in people.
I think that's a very common way that, especially in families, that trust devolves, I guess. And for many of us, what was a secret, even in my childhood, Grandma wore jeans one day, oh my gosh, like that, whoa, don't tell anybody that. And the secret part was you were going to be harmed. Somehow your family would be disgraced, or there would be some horrible thing that happened. So the opposite of trust, I'm thinking, has a lot to do with fear.
Yeah.
Fear of consequences, fear of, well, even when I was watching TV with my dad, fear that if I went outside in tiny little Warrenton, Virginia, that who knows what happened. I didn't have the understanding. I didn't know how big the world was, and where, I remember my dad showing me a globe. Well, the world didn't look too big. It looked about that big. And from us to there didn't look really all that big to me. It looked kind of scary. They could just get here. But that was also a reinforcement of the other.
Right.
And I think that for me, whenever there was a us versus them, we're right, they're not right. We vote this way, we don't vote that way. We're Protestant, we're not Catholic. Although we did have Catholic friends, we were the cool Protestants in our little town, I must say. But that led to, in some cases I could see where that would lead to mistrust. Yeah. Is there anything else that might lead to people being distrustful of other people?
Well, you spoke about fear, we spoke about prejudging, and the other thing is shame.
Oh, that's a big one.
Shame.
That's a big one.
This is wrong, or this is not right. Depends on how which vantage point that you're looking at that, right. And the shame that the behavior can bring on oneself. And so then the lack of trust even in oneself and not making right decisions, and the shame that can bring, that's scary for a lot of people. Especially, you mentioned, okay, we're human. Well, most people like to believe that human equals perfect, not imperfect.
Not my family, I have to say. But yes, I see what you're saying. And even when you are going through what I would consider pretty normal transactions, young people starting to date, and then you break up, right? Like, an 8th grade breakup is worst in the world, but it is at that time, right? And if you think you have been betrayed, that I've worked with clients literally in their probably 50s and 60s who are still talking about a fiance that left them at the altar in their 20s. And they've never been able to date because of that. So holding on to that fear has a lot to do with, I believe, in what I've seen, how you can progress past the fear, how you can go into a more loving or heart-centered place.
Yeah.
And it is difficult, and a lot of it is the judging, I think. And in that scenario we just talked about, when there's a romantic breakup, we'll say, there can always be the I wasn't good enough. I made the mistake. Why did he leave me? Whatever that is. But it's so often, you and I have talked about, it's the self-judgment piece that leads you not to be able to trust yourself because of what you think happened on the outside. Speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when I look at myself and I create the stories that then lead to the shame or the fear or the lack of trust, they often involve stories of, I'm not good enough. How could I have ever made this decision? Why in the world didn't I see that? Or why did I do that? Versus coming from the place of this is the information that I have right now. And I'm going to make this decision based on the information that I have, and truly trust that everything in the world happens for me, and it happens for my greatest good, and whatever happens, even if it isn't the outcome that I expected, it's going to be perfect for me. That's the most evolved place to be when we talk about trust. that experience of those, how could I have done this, the fear of not getting it right or looking stupid, or the shame that comes from then afterwards, really comes from not believing that everything is happening for me. Everything that's happening for you in the moment, that it's all has its purpose and has its place. And so when I look at this dance, which is really what it is between in trust, it's that self-love where I believe that everything that's happening in my life, I've got the best information at this moment for it, based on the circumstances, based on whatever has happened to me in my past, in this moment. And for me, that so much of that comes from forgiveness. It's the place to.
Yeah. I think that you're right. I think it takes a while for people to get to the place of, I trust that everything's happening for my highest and good. If you're a viewer of this program, you know that we talk often about Louise Hay, and one of her favorite affirmations that have gotten me through I don't know how many situations. Everything is happening for my highest and best. I am safe. Yeah. Safety is a really big thing for me. And that has helped me a million times. And I agree. There's a lot of times when I thought, this don't look so good. I don't get this. I don't understand how this is going to end up. How a divorce, for example, I went through a not pleasant divorce. Not that I think any of them are particularly pleasant, but it was really a horrific time. In the middle of it, it was hard to believe that everything was working for my highest and best. And I also didn't have the understanding at that point that it's not just about me, right? We are all interconnected. We are all interconnected. Everybody from my ex-husband, myself, our kids, the attorneys, our families, we all are learning, growing, evolving. That was a big lesson for me, to understand that the highest and best opportunity is not only for me, but for everyone involved. That required a level of trust that took me a while to get to. How about you?
Oh, yeah, you're speaking such truth with that, because that is, when I look back and think about myself when something happened when I was in, well, you mentioned the breakups,
Right.
in high school, but being in the 20s,
Yep.
and feeling like it was the end of the world when something happened, the end of the world when I didn't get that opportunity, or what seemed to be the perfect door, it closed on a job that I really wanted. And yet then something better would come out of it. However, I wasn't evolved enough, Diane, to really be able to see that. I was more focused and spent so much time looking at what was closed and what I thought should have been mine, that it was hard for me to see that the path was so much better. And when I look now, when you speak about your own personal experiences, some of the biggest ones for me, last year in my business, it was a hard year. It was a really hard year at the very, very beginning of the year. And I trusted people who I believed were going to do the right thing. And things didn't work out the way I envisioned. They didn't. There were doors that closed and hurts that happened. And I found myself doubting whether or not I was smart enough, talented enough, good enough to be in business. And as I went down this journey of really choosing love,
Yep.
you know all about that, choosing love, what I found was it was exactly the best thing that could have happened to me. Now, do I wish it would have come in a different package? I will tell you, I absolutely wish those lessons would have come in a slightly prettier package. And at the same time, that experience of finding that something that seems to be the most traumatic experience can turn to be into the most beautiful gift what it did for me to be able to look at those relationships and what lessons that perhaps I gave as a gift, as well as the ones that I received in learning how to operate as love, were one of the biggest gifts that I've received this far in life. And I can now, from this place, go back and look at those experiences in my 20s, my 30s, and my 40s, and go, wow, like, those were all for me.
Yes.
I could not be in that place before. And I see that when you speak about safety, I see the safety in those experiences, that it was the right path to keep me in alignment for my mission and my calling and what I'm here to do.
What you're here to do. I love that. One of my mentors, Robert Holden, has a phrase that I love. He says, some of your best gifts come wrapped in ugly paper. And it sounds like you and I have had some ugly paper on our gifts. But we were able, once we unwrapped them with distance, to see that. And I love that you referenced love, right? And viewers of this program knows that when we're talking about love, certainly when I'm talking about love, it could be God, universe, spirit, whatever energy you believe creates universes, makes our heart beats, makes the world turn. That's the energy of love that I'm referring to when we talk about that. I have learned that while people can disappoint me, and even people who love me and who I deeply love, they can disappoint me because they're on their path. Organizations can disappoint me, countries can disappoint me, groups of people, all kinds of, there's plenty of opportunities to be disappointed or be hurt. Love never hurts you. An old boyfriend may hurt you, your parents may hurt you. Love never hurts you. It is only love. It's only love. So I think part of my trust journey was learning what to trust. And I trust love. That's who I trust now. How has that evolved for you? Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And that has not always been easy either.
Oh no, because that's not, did you ever read that in the book?
No.
Did y'all get that in school? Because I know I didn't, but I wasn't in Catholic school, so maybe you guys got it. I didn't get it.
No, you didn't get it. Not so much.
Not like that.
Not so much.
Yeah.
And that's it. That when you look at love being this entity beyond, I can't see it. I can't touch it in a tangible way. I can experience it. And so that trusting something that isn't tangible, like a person, learning to do that, boy, that's a process.
I think it is a process. Now, I do think you can feel it. I can feel, certainly I can feel love for other people. I feel love for animals. I feel love for causes that I'm passionate about. I know what I'm devoted to, where that passion comes from. In deep meditation, I can feel that energy of oneness and that beautiful enveloping in love that is wonderful. But I agree, it wasn't like I just came out of the chute that way, right? It took me a long way to get there. Yeah. But that's what I've learned to trust. Not in the economy. I'm not trusting in anything specific, except I trust that that energy that is bigger than all of us knows the way everything works, what part we have to play, what part we have to play together, how we interact with everyone else. And I agree, rather it is what seems to be a horrible situation like a hurricane or a natural disaster, that, how could that be a good thing? But I have somebody in my family that just went through one last year, and she said over and over again, oh my goodness, I can't believe the outpouring of love, support, friendship, fellowship that came from that. People coming together to serve each other. I mean, that brings me to tears to just think about that. Again, do I wish it had been because of a natural disaster? No. But was there something bigger at play there? Seems like there was. Seems like there was. And if you can get to that place of trusting it's for your highest and best, even if you don't believe it, because I got to tell you the truth, I didn't believe it at first. I didn't. I thought, okay, this is what Louise Hay says, I'll keep saying it, and one day maybe it'll sink in. And that's pretty much what happened. Because as I looked for ways that might be influencing my life, that's kind of how I could, in retrospect, look back and go, oh, that happened, and that door happened. And if I had stayed on the path that my ego, my personality said, this is what I should do, none of these really wonderful things would have happened. Like, can you imagine if you did exactly what you thought you were going to do in high school? Oh my gosh. Who does that actually? How many people, as a freshman, when they ask, go around the room, what do you want to be when you grow up or when you get out of school? I guess there are some people that do that, but when does life ever unfold the way you think it's going to be?
I don't know that it does.
Yay.
I don't know that it does, and thank heavens for that. It's
I'm
a good
glad.
thing. I look back and say, yeah, I'm really glad that I'm not a welder or a physical therapist. Not that those aren't wonderful
Right.
careers, but for me, it would not have worked out as well as what has been given to me in my in my humble opinion, because every time that I've been so convinced that this was the way, this was the thing that had to happen, when I was shown something different and I said, heck no, like, I'm not going there, that can't be mine. And I took the leap of faith and really trusted. It always worked out better than I ever envisioned.
I think that's the part that's hard for people. I know it was hard for me when I have been at crossroads, like you mentioned last year with your business, when I've had those times where I thought, man, what did I screw up? How did I get here? This is not where I'm supposed to be. I thought it would be this way. I thought it would be that way. So I know for me, there was a lot of self-judgment. There was a lot of going back and saying, oh yeah, the mistake was there, the mistake was there, the mistake was there. Instead of looking, where are my gifts, where are my opportunities? I spent a lot of time kicking my own self.
Well, that's looking for the evidence of what's not working versus looking for the evidence of what is working or what you do. I'll often say to clients, how much have you celebrated?
Yeah.
How much have you celebrated lately in what it is that you've done really well? The small wins, and they can not even necessarily small, just the choices that you've made that were really, really good. And yet the human mind is wonderful at remembering the things that didn't work, the things that were broken, the things that can, like you say, can carry around for decades, that was the decision that perhaps you didn't listen to your intuition, you didn't listen to the smaller voice that told you don't do that or do that, and you chose something else. Or perhaps, when I think of myself, the fear to not have taken a risk that could have led to something else. And I go back to when you're in that place of celebration and remembering those moments. Wow, like, what a different experience to be washed over with love and washed over with gratitude and feeling that tangible embrace of, gosh, you got it right, girl. Like, you did it right. All of this is right, because there isn't any wrong. There's only...
That's exact. You got it right there. You can't do this wrong. You can make... I agree. I think people can do unethical, immoral things.
Yes.
However, we don't even know what that's for, and we are not telling you to do that, by the way. No.
No, it's just that even in the circumstances where for my business to be in this place of thriving and magic, I had to experience that, what I would consider unethical behavior, in order for me to be in this place of thriving. It could have come some other way, perhaps. And it didn't, exactly. And so I'm not judging it. There's something that I say at my annual event to people who come and volunteer, and it is, there's no way that you're going to get it 100% right. There's no way. And there's no way that you can possibly get it wrong.
There you go.
You show up and you do your best every day. I show up and I'll do my best. And whatever happens, we trust that everything will work out as it's intended, even if it doesn't make sense. Diane, I went to an event. I thought this was so amazing. Some person left, this wasn't the amazing part, but some person left behind their briefcase.
Okay.
So, and they were driving 8 hours away, and it had their glasses and, you know, all of, you know, important things in their briefcase. Yeah. And so my thought was, well, the briefcase should just stay here, right? It should stay at the person's house, and then once they figure it out, they'll mail it. They'll mail it to the person or figure out how it can get to them. No, I leave and get a text message that someone from the event decided to take it with them, right? And I'm thinking, why in the world did this happen? How in the world did this happen? The person who lost their briefcase ended up coming back for it, and it wasn't there, right? So turned around halfway, not halfway through the trip, but into the trip, decides for some reason, you know what, I should go and get gas. I don't really need any, but I'm just going to top off. Whose voice do they hear from the corner? Of course, the person who had taken their briefcase, who didn't know they were going to be stopping off at the gas station. They didn't plan it. They didn't text. They didn't make a rendezvous or anything like that. It was just perfect timing, because she trusted she was supposed to take it, didn't know why. He trusted that he got this inkling that he was supposed to stop for gas, didn't know why. And here they meet. You can't, how many moments in time do you have where that happens and you look and go, this is not even possible?
It's not. That's like TV stuff.
Right.
But it's real life when you allow it.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
I also really love the idea of having people celebrate. And I think that is a fantastic way to help build trust. One of the things that I do with my clients is when they're in a particular place, I have them write a list of all their accomplishments. I mean, from walking, learning to talk, riding a bike, and it is magic when they come back and go, wow, I thought all these things were insignificant. But when you look at them in totality, it really does help you understand that there is something beyond you to trust.
Yeah.
But it is coming through you.
Yeah.
Just like it came through with the person and the briefcase, which is, that's ridiculous, right? How does that happen? Because love was in control.
Yes.
And they were receiving love's guidance. So when it comes to helping people understand how to trust, what I help people do and what had helped me was to understand how to feel guided. And I'll be real honest with you, every time Diane's head was in control, that's when things didn't work out so well. That's when it didn't work out so well. And I don't mean when I was afraid to take a risk. There was a difference between understanding I was being stretched and being in total fear of something. Not doing something because I was totally afraid of it. That's a different thing. Being stretched to me is you're a little uncomfortable, there's a little excitement. I was thinking about this today. Do you happen to remember when you first learned to ride a bike?
I don't know how to ride a bike.
Okay, so we're going to look at me. Okay, so the first time I rode a bike, my parents had the little training wheels on it, and my mom was on the back of the bike. She was holding it, and I was going to town, and I thought everything was great. And don't take the training wheels off. Okay, we didn't take the training wheels off. Then we took the training wheels off, but my mom was still holding the back of the bike. And I remember feeling just exhilarated because I was going to be able to ride like the big kids in the neighborhood. And unbeknownst to me, Mom took her hand off the bike. And I remember going down the road and I turned around and there's Mom waving. I'm like, why aren't you holding the bike? And she said, because you're riding on your own. To me, trust has evolved like that. It's like God has to hold my hand, and all of a sudden it's like, no, you're part of me. You go ahead, you've got this. You are doing my work. And when I put myself in a place of service and wanting to do that, that's when a lot of things have really unfolded for me. Have you found that?
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yes.
And you really should ride a bike. We'll do that one day.
Yes.
Just to do it.
Well, and I had an experience where, much like you, with the training wheels and all of that, and then what happened was I ended up being on a boardwalk and was pushed off, literally off the boardwalk
While
on
you were
my
riding a bike?
while I was riding a bike,
Okay.
and I was a little kid.
So there's your
and
trust
I
issue.
never, that's exactly it, and I never trusted that it was a safe activity. So right there was
Wow.
and I will ride on one of those two people, the tandem bikes.
Right,
Done
right.
that with my husband, done that with friends, done one of those Surreys, where you sit four in a buggy.
Pretty
and
safe.
And that's pretty, right, it's safe.
So now how crazy is this? Because you were talking about beliefs.
Yes.
So you were afraid to ride a bike, but you were in law enforcement.
Yes.
So many people might think that might be a little more dangerous than riding a bike, but it's all about your perception.
Right.
It's all about your perception. Isn't that
And I've
fascinating?
tried it, and I have tried to get on, and that same experience of that 8-year-old comes back, like just sitting on it as an adult comes back. And so, yes, absolutely, you're right. Some of the things in law enforcement, some of the things that I've done, yeah, they could have been considered.
I mean, you're a speaker. Most
Yes.
people, isn't that supposed to be the most terrifying thing, to get up on
Yes.
stage, and you get on stage in front of thousands of people.
Yeah.
And as long as you don't ride a bike there, you're cool.
That's exactly right.
That's not a problem. Isn't it amazing? That's the power of your thoughts. Because I have my stuff too, right? I have my stuff too that I don't do, even at this age. And it's just our thought. So what's coming to me right now is what I shouldn't trust are maybe my thoughts.
Ooh.
My ego thoughts. That's what I should be like breaking up with, is my ego. It's my ego thoughts. I think we just had a light bulb moment, maybe. At least I did.
Well, what if the ego thoughts keep me safe? Like, that's the part where I
that's
go
what you
back
think.
and forth. Right, exactly.
That's what your ego
and,
thinks.
And so then differentiating that would take us back to, is this love speaking, or is this the voice of fear?
Yep.
And so that's a huge, that even taking me back to the bicycle, that takes me to the place of, so is that fear speaking, or is that love speaking about whether or not that's safe or not? So it's
And that sounds like a conditioned response based on
Right.
your very real
Right.
experience.
yes.
What has always occurred to
Yes.
me, I take that back, not always, but since I've been becoming more aware and looking for these things, right? Because people will ask me, what's the difference between listening to love and fear, or your ego, things like that. To me, this is a two-hand thing. I have to do it this way. Love, I look at nature. Nature is intelligent, it's expansive, it's creative. Even if you all have plants at home, and if you have a plant that is in the dark, it will eventually lean toward the sunlight. It's intelligent. Ecosystems are intelligent. Even if you look at a square foot radius in your yard, there is a beautiful ecosystem right there. And what else does nature always want to do? It's expanding. It's always expanding. It's always renewing. Fall goes into spring, goes into summer. It's always renewing. Love to me is like that. So when I'm getting an idea that is pushing me to expand, my business, my whatever it is, it's just, there's a beautiful nudge that's, come on, you can be more, do more, have more. And it's not have things, right? I don't mean
Right.
that. Have more opportunities to be of service. Have more opportunities to have beautiful friends like you, to get to talk about really cool topics like this. That to me is following the call of love. Fear, even in this situation, we were talking about this before we started, there's no way I thought I was going to sit under lights in front of a TV camera. Fear would have said, no, you can't do that. You're too old. You don't have the right body type. That's what that would have been. That's what that would have been. So to me, fear and ego can be very constricting.
Yeah.
Can be constricting. Now, there's another coach that I follow that I like. Have you ever heard of Michael Neal? He's known as the super coach. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
He's got a phrase that I love. And what he says is, yes, absolutely, follow the call of love. That's what you're here to do. And don't be a moron, right? Just don't walk out in traffic. Don't just, you follow the call of love, follow your heart and use your head. You do have a reason. There's a reason why we have an intellect. And it's, to me, to help us carry out the call of love in tangible human ways, like we do with our work, like we do for our coaching clients, like we do in our books, like we do in these talks. That is a way to use your heart, follow your heart, and use your head. And don't be a moron, as Michael said. That's kind of a great phrase, isn't it?
Yes.
It is. Be smart about it. Be smart about it. Does that, to me, if you are going to ride a bike, then you would want to do your mantras, be comfortable before you try riding a bike or anything else. I certainly want to be prepared, but there is a point where you just have to do the leap of faith.
Yeah.
You just have to say, I'm going for it. No matter how this turns out, I'm going for it. And I trust that it's going to be for my highest and best, even though I don't know what that's going to look like.
Well, and one of the things with that is, even as an adult, the expectation that because you're an adult that you're not going to fall down is an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah.
It would be an unrealistic expectation, right? Because that's still part of learning, and if you're still you don't have the experience, just because you have more years in your life doesn't necessarily mean that you have that element figured out. And in my case, with the bike riding. And so it just isn't something that comes up as somebody who doesn't typically ask me, hey, you want to go bike riding? And it's not because people know that I don't ride a bike. What's interesting to me about that experience is that I haven't thought about it in a long time. And that you brought it up, and we're talking about trust, how those beliefs actually are still so much part of just the fabric of being human, and being in the examination of what other ones are perhaps still creating a reality that is not necessarily true.
So I love that. So what else is at play? What else is at play that might be holding me back? Right. That's the way I look at it. And even that's something I use spirit, love to guide me. One of the things that I say all the time, every day, is show me. Just show me how to do this. And I will have some people say to me, well, do you get an email? Do you get a phone call? What happens? You learn to look for signs. That's what I do. What tips? Let's talk about how people can develop that trust muscle, because to me it's like a muscle that you exercise and it gets stronger and stronger. That's the way it worked for me. Is that what you found?
Yes.
So what tips could we give people today on how to relax into trust, how to be aware of where they're not trusting, when they should trust, without being a moron, quite frankly? If there's your neighbor's dog bites, you can just walk by and say hi. You don't have to try to pet them every time. That would not be smart. I just think that's being smart. So.
Well, and look for evidence. It's looking for evidence where trust actually exists, and where it is, and where you've made a decision to trust and it's worked out. That's strengthening the muscle by finding evidence that it has, and then taking the time to celebrate. You mentioned with your clients that you'll have them look at all of those, all of the things that they've done, all of their accomplishments, from things that happened, at the very, very beginning to just walking. And I will ask clients, what is it at the beginning of every single phone call, what is it that you want to celebrate right now? Mm-hmm. Give me 3 things that you want to celebrate that's working out. And I can't tell you, Diane, how many times people have said there's nothing worth celebrating at the very beginning of a relationship, of a coaching relationship. There's nothing. And that's part of practice. You've got to find that evidence. You've got to actively seek it out and recognize it and say, wow, like this is actually something that I placed my trust in, this person, place, thing, and it worked out really well. And I want to give myself kudos for taking that leap of faith, for trusting. Because ultimately there's no
Right.
person out there to trust.
Right.
It always starts from ourselves. So
Right.
that for me is a big piece, is the evidence and the celebration. And then the other part is forgiveness, which is the other tool that you forgive yourself if you feel that you made a decision and you don't think that that you have the outcome that you thought was going to be the perfect thing. That tool of forgiveness allows you to, I believe, has helped me certainly, to trust more and to trust deeper, because there's not this right place that I'm trying to arrive at. There's not this place where it's all, unicorns and rainbows and sunshine. There's just life. And it's wonderful along the way. And, Project Forgive is I just love the work that they do around forgiveness. And so one of the tools that they use is accepting the apology you may never receive.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
It's a Project Forgive is a nonprofit that has free resources. And I love the work of Dr. Sean Duperron, because this accepting the apology you may never receive has the ability to change your relationship with yourself so that you can change the relationship, your interaction with other people, because there's not a way for us to get it right all the time.
So the energy that people hold in resentment, in feelings of rejection, in feelings of regret, to me that energy, once it's freed up through forgiveness, it can flow into trust. To me, that is more energy you have available for love, joy, happiness, freedom.
Yeah.
There is a tremendous release of energy with the forgiveness. And I think it does dovetail very nicely into the trust piece, because just like we were talking about the gentleman, this person I'm thinking of, a gentleman in his 50s that's still upset about the girlfriend in his 20s. Mm-hmm. I think people get frozen in time. It's 30 years later. He's not the same person. He sees things differently. He understands things differently. All of you are the same. You're not the same today as you were yesterday, right? You and I saw each other last week. There's been a lot happening this week.
Amen.
There's a lot that happened
Amen.
this week. So we're not even showing up the same in just a week. We're not even showing up the same. Trusting for me has a lot to do with trusting the way I evolve, not because of what I read or what I do, but because of who I am, who you are as a divine being. Yeah. And to trust there is an overall plan that I don't know about and I don't necessarily need to know about. I'm thinking when I was in first and second grade, I didn't know how to do senior level trigonometry. I'm pretty sure I didn't even know trigonometry existed. I was still on 1 + 1 or whatever we were doing. I think life's a lot like that. You experience things, you learn things, and then as you evolve, more things happen. I love the idea of looking back and seeing, where did I trust something and it worked? I also really like the idea that there is something to trust that is bigger than you. It's bigger than you, it's bigger than me, and we don't have to understand how it works. That's not comfortable, quite frankly. I never found it comfortable. I wish I did, but I didn't. Now it's just more of a part of me. The way that I've gotten there is meditation, no doubt, because there are just too many little voices in Diane's head that were telling her the other things. To me, it was very hard to be settled in that place of love because I was too often in the place of fear. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So how did you personally, you looked for evidence, what else have you done to help you recognize that call of love, to help you recognize in a situation what might be the best? I'm not saying actually, did you notice that, what's right or wrong? What is the best decision for you in a certain place? How do you get there?
Quiet.
Okay.
Quiet. I get quiet first. Stop, notice, and get quiet, and listen And I'm not listen to the voices that are in my head, listen to the silence. And then I actually have an experience, I have a feeling of something that will perhaps trigger a thought. One of the things for me is that I'm also a verbal processor.
Yep.
And because of being a verbal processor, the quiet and the meditation is wonderful to ground me and to have me, get a message. And then I need to be in community, for me personally. And so my tool then is to surround myself with people like yourself, where I can have conversations that say, does this make sense? This is what came up for me. I don't get it. And sometimes I'm not looking for someone to say, yes, you should do this. This is what I'm looking for is that in that conversation, there may be something else that bubbles up. There's something else that gets triggered for me, something else that I noticed that I didn't perhaps before, or something that the person that I'm speaking to says to me that I go, the light bulb just went on. I get why that thought showed up for me. And it's never the most, obvious. I don't have these huge scrolls that come up in meditation. They're often words.
Yep. Feelings. Images.
Exactly.
And it can come through somebody you're speaking with.
Yes.
We could talk about this all day. Like literally we could.
Yeah.
Well, actually we have. And I'm sure we're going to continue to. This is a fascinating topic. I really hope that you all will look at ways that you can trust yourself, others, love more than you do, differently than you do. I hope that you take some of the tools that we talked about today, and it is my hope and prayer that you will find a way to trust that beautiful place of love that's in you, in all of us. Lisa Marie, thank you so much for helping us talk about this today.
Thank you.
And please let people know where they can find out more about you.
Upside Thinking is the name of my business, UPSIDE, and the word thinking.com. So upsidethinking.com, and then I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, and those are good places too.
We'll have all of that in the credits. Thank you so much for being part of this. You can always find me at DianeHaworth.com, and you can find out about my passion project at beloveprinciples.org. Thank you so much for watching today. Thank you to everybody that helped with this, and special thanks to our producer, Tremaine Johnson. Nothing happens here without his help. He runs Love Unleashed Productions. Thank you, Tremaine. Thank you, everybody. Thanks you for watching. I'm Diane Haworth. This is Heart-Centered Success, and I'll see you next time.